Colla, you can take the floor and go ahead.
All right, welcome from Canada. Nice to meet you all. I'm going to talk about e-learning. I've been involved in e-learning. I designed my first course in 2002 in the Faculty of Education at the University of Ottawa in Canada. So I've been teaching online for over 20 years. I was in the beginning, it was very difficult. Students didn't want to change. They found it was a lot of work to not only learn the content of the course, but also to learn the technology. 20 years later, that's totally changed. Students usually feel very comfortable with technology and often more so than the students. So the course I'm going to talk about or use as an example, I've taught in undergrad, I've taught in grad courses at university, I've taught in training courses with the World Health Organization and Doctors Without Borders and in the Faculty of Medicine and in training. But the course I'm going to use as an example is a course I developed as part of our Dig It project, which is an Erasmus grant with 5 countries, including Cyprus, Slovenia, Italy, and Finland. And so it's a course for professors to teach them how to teach learners online. So that's the course I'm going to refer to, but I'll be talking about my general knowledge of teaching online over the past 20 years. So the first tip I would give you when designing or delivering or evaluating e-learning is, if you can, do a needs analysis. For this course, the one in the Erasmus grants, we did a needs analysis at the University of Malta. We ran 3 focus group interviews with 24 academic staff from 6 faculties to find out what they needed and what they wanted with regards to e-learning. This was done back in 2016. And at that time, even though I've been teaching online for almost 20 years, University of Malta was still very far behind, and there was a lot of anger towards the idea that they would have to change. It was almost like what I experienced earlier at the University of Malta. Anyway, we wanted to understand, and if you can, even an informal needs analysis. I've done it when designing in-service training with doctors, and it's very interesting because doctors wanted different things than, say, professors. They wanted it quick. If they can read it, they rather read it than watch a video. And so doing a needs analysis means that you can give the learner what they need, what they want, or both. And also, it just means the first iteration of your course will be much more successful. Most of the online learning I have designed has been very successful. And one of the main reasons is I usually do a needs analysis. In the case of this course, it was fairly extensive because it was supported with a grant. But even in a course in a university, I may do an informal one. If I'm teaching face-to-face, I may give a little survey before I turn it to online to ask students what they need and want. So when I interviewed the professors in 2016 at the University of Malta, I found they needed training, and they wanted in-service training and support to help them make the transition. So we designed at first a 6-module course called Designing, Delivering, and Evaluating Effective Study Units. We taught it once. We found out they found it overwhelming. We then changed it from 6 modules to 9. So evaluating your course and finding out what's working, what's not working is a second tip. And Sonia also mentioned that. So this is a 9-module course that we designed to teach professors. The second thing in our Erasmus grant, one of the outputs was designing digital education framework, quality standard framework. So to do this in our grant, we did an extensive review of the literature on 5 different platforms to find out the existing frameworks and models for effective e-learning that already existed. We made we had an extensive review of literature with thousands of articles. We read the abstracts, we limited it down. We found that I think it was 33 articles that had frameworks that were related to e-learning. We took the best of each and we designed our own to try to make a better one. So this is called the Digital Education, European Union Digital Education Quality Standard Framework. And so the variables in it are content. You need to have effective e-learning, you need effective content, and there's sub-variables that relate to that. You need delivery service, you need a community, you need structure, and you need outcomes. And I'll talk more about the framework later, but this is an interactive framework. So if you mouse over these variables and sub-variables, the definition will emerge. So it is not a step-by-step process on how to design effective e-learning. It is a theoretical framework to guide the design, delivery, and evaluation. So reading through the definitions, reading through the operationalized terms will give you a lot of information on how to ground your quality framework. And it also will help you deliver it and evaluate it. And I'll show you this interactive model in a few minutes. So from the course I'm going to show you, and all my courses align with the framework. The framework guides them. It's a quality standard. It makes them easier to evaluate it. So the variables are at the top of this table: content, delivery, support, structure, communication, and outcomes. These are directly pulled from the framework. And so what we did here is we have 2 modules on content, 2 on delivery, 1 on support, 1 on structure, 1 on community, and 1 on outcomes for 9 modules. So if you see under content, create course description and learning outcomes, writing effective learning objectives, repurposing classroom content into online content, and finding and uploading available online resources. So that's what you have to do when you think about the content of designing your course. And the same for delivery, support, and I'm not going to read the table to you, but you can have a copy of this presentation and read it so that you know exactly what each of the variables and sub-variable means. For example, outcomes means ensuring the learner's learning outcomes are met, designing effective assessment, assessing your learners, and also evaluating your course. So this is a really helpful table to really understand what you need to do for each of these variables, and you can read over it yourself on your own. So for this course that I'm using as an example to talk about tips, we've now taught it 5 or 6 times. The first time we invited 2 people from each of the partners in our Erasmus grant to participate in it. Everyone else was from Malta. After our partners from the Erasmus grant took the course, we gave them the course and asked them to teach it. So this course has now been taught in 5 countries, and it's been taught at the University of Malta several times. The first time we had a large dropout rate, but since we improved it, we now have almost no dropout rate. There's usually a waiting list to take the course. I'm beginning it again, I think for the 7th time in Malta tomorrow. There are 31 people registered. And so it's really been helpful, especially after the pandemic. There's a real demand for this course because people want to learn how to transfer their face-to-face courses into online courses. Any graduate from this course, so now we have a total of 250 graduates from this course. After the next iteration, there'll be almost 300. People who graduate from this course, we developed a second course in our Erasmus project called Train the Trainer. It's 3 modules, not 9, so it's much shorter, much less intensive. And graduates, it extends and complements the 9-module course. And graduates from the Train the Trainer course become champions in their department or faculty. And we are developing incentives to get them to take the course and to support their colleagues in transitioning from face-to-face to online courses. We're now in a new grant application. We're trying to get this course, this 9-module course, extended to a course for Bachelor of Education. So students who are becoming teachers will have taken a course designed to teach them to teach effectively online. And hopefully they can be, as part of their program, after they've taken the course, they can become teaching assistants to professors and help get experience teaching, and also help support professors, because they're often more comfortable, and often professors that are transitioning don't need the 9-module course. They just need a question answered or someone to drop in their office and do a demonstration. So hopefully if we get the grant, this 9-module course will be part of the faculty of, will become a course, a credit course in the Faculty of Education and also computer science. So the biggest tip I can give you for teaching online is to use a roadmap. And a roadmap is what I have students go to start their course. First of all, I'm going to take you to the framework and show you the interactive model. So this is the framework I showed you earlier. So this is the European Union Digital Education Quality Standard Framework. It's published online. We just did videos in 6 languages: Maltese, Slovene, Greek, the 6 languages, English and Finnish. And there will be a 5-minute video link to this, and it will explain how to use the framework. As I said, it's not a step-by-step process. The course, the 9-module course, is a step-by-step process. This is a theoretical framework, but if you mouse over, for example, outcomes, the definition will emerge. What does it mean to have effective outcomes? So you can read that. And these are the subvariables. So transfer of knowledge is one. If you click on that, you can read the definition. So all the variables and subvariables are operationalized, and there is an article published on this, the development of the framework, and you can get the article and read it. And also you can play with this framework and read all the definitions. And in the article, there's a table with the operationalized terms in it. The other thing that's in this framework is a toolkit of evaluation tools to evaluate programs and modules or sessions that use the framework. So there's, for example, a temperature check. A temperature check is a short survey that takes about 5 minutes to complete. And it basically, we get learners to do this after 3 modules to give us an indication of how the course is going, to let us know, do we need to make quick changes? Are there little problems that we can catch before they become big problems? So this is a Likert scale question. It's very short. And we use this to get information early on. And it also has 2 open-ended questions. And this is a tip. If you're going to ask open-ended questions, these are the only questions I really need to get the best information. What is working for you in the course, and how can the course be improved? So we give this little survey early on so that we can get feedback early on and make any changes to the course that need to be made. Now, what I have found is that the first time I taught the course, this was really useful, and I made changes. For example, I found students were overwhelmed, and I reduced the number of assignments. Now that I've been teaching so often, I almost know what to do, or I've made so many mistakes and learned by trial and error that I almost need to make no more changes. So I still give the temperature check, but I rarely find that I need to make changes after I've learned so much from it. Now I need to get out of here. Okay. So this is the framework that I mentioned. I invite you to go to the link that is on the in the slide presentation and play with this to get information. It also will guide your delivery and your evaluation of the course. So this is a tip to get quality effective learning, is to use a framework as a guide to design and evaluate it. Okay, so some of the different tips that we use is we give step-by-step guides on how to do things, how to create a video, how to make a posting. We also have a question and answer forum that students can quickly post a question, and we invite learners to also answer. So usually if someone posts a question, the answer is the response is quick by either me or a student. Often the answer is in the syllabus or in the roadmap and someone just missed it. So usually a student can answer the question. Another tip is I do not allow learners to email me unless it's personal. So what I found when I started teaching online, I would get a lot of emails, often the same question from 5 different learners. I spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes answering the same question. So now if learners have a question about an assignment, about the syllabus, about anything about the course, I ask them to post it. In the first face-to-face class, I make this really clear. Do not email me unless it's personal. My grandmother died, I'm going to miss a session, or I'm very ill, I need an extension. Something personal, you can email me. Anything about the course, anything about an assignment, anything at all, you must post, because likely several students have the same question and it can be answered quickly. So if you can end up spending an hour a day answering emails, don't do it. Save yourself time. No emails. I find I get almost no emails in my course, maybe 3 a term, 3 a course, rarely, sometimes none. So that's one way to save time. Another way to save time is in your discussion group. If you have 30 learners, my courses, I divide the learners into 3 groups of 10, so that when they post and they need to read all the posts of their colleagues and respond, they don't have so much reading to do. That was one of the biggest complaints when I started teaching online. It takes too much to read the discussion and post. So another tip is divide your groups into groups. So group 1, 2, and 3, and they only need to read and post in their own group. They're welcome to read all 3 if they don't have a life, but most won't. And so have them divided. You need to read all groups and answer to all groups, but they don't. So that will be something that will save the learner time and will make them happier. So the other thing I do is when they have assignments, I will give them a list of tips of common errors that learners before have made. So here's a bunch of tips. Make sure you do this. Be careful not to do this. Example. So usually their first assignment is much better. Another tip is I ask learners who do a good example of their job of their assignments, if I can use their assignments as e-samples. And for every assignment, I have a half a dozen or more e-samples of good assignments. You don't get that in a face-to-face class. So they can go on and see what's expected and use these assignments to understand expectations. When I find sometimes learners have said, well, isn't that spoon feeding them? No, I don't think so. When learners feel comfortable, when learners understand what you expect, they'll take bigger risks and do better assignments. It saves you time because the first draft of their assignment is better than it would be if they didn't get the tips and they didn't get the e-samples, and it saves them time and frustration. So, oh, I'm going to go to the roadmap. Back to the roadmap. So I showed you that this is the roadmap. These are the variables again from the framework, content delivery service, community, etc. Explains what the roadmap is and why we do it. Now the roadmap has each week. Usually we only open it 1 week in advance, so they can't get too far ahead. So each module or each session has clear learning outcomes or objectives listed. So here by the end of this week, you will. They're very clear. They start with a verb. They make it clear what's expected. So first thing they see in the roadmap is the learning outcomes for that module, clearly stated. Then they have each of my courses or each of my sessions is divided into 3 sections. Read it, where there's links to everything they need to read. So it's very convenient. All the links are here. Apply it. That's where they, after have read the content, they apply. There's activities to apply the theory in practice. And what I do here is I make sure it's something they want for in this course. They design the first module or the first session of their online course. So through the 9 modules, every week we do something. The first module, we develop the learning outcomes. The next module, we develop the content. The next module, we find resources. So it's very practical. So they're motivated because they're getting something they want. And same with my learners. If it's a teacher ed course, they develop learning outcomes or lesson plans they can use in their classroom. If it's an engineering class, have them do something that they want to do, that's their idea, that's practical. So it helps them motivate it, and it helps them make it more useful. So they read what's necessary. It's convenient online. The first is an e-doc, which is all my examples and talks about what they need to do and why and the theory behind it. There's also extra readings that give them the supplementary content. And then there's a discuss it, where after they've read it and they've done their assignments, they go online and there's a question or two, a probe that they need to answer. And I also, another tip is I have a participation mark. Sonia mentioned it, one of the downfalls is that participation. A couple of tricks for that is I track the learners. After a week or so, I go online, there's a tracking, you can find out if they've logged on. If they haven't logged on yet, or they haven't spent any time, I email them and I say, I notice you haven't logged on yet, or I message them. Is there any problem? They realize they're being watched. Often that will eliminate the problem. They come on and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I've just been busy. And if they still don't show up, I'll email them again. I notice, it's been 8 days since you been on last, or you haven't logged on yet. Is there any issue? Participation is part of your grade. And then if they still haven't logged on, I'll suggest maybe it's too busy. Maybe you should drop the course or whatever. But usually just letting them know they're being watched is one trick in getting them to participate. The other is I always have a participation mark in, so they're, I use a rubric and they have to post and they have to respond to their partner or their colleagues' posts. And if they don't, they will lose. It's a small amount of even a 5% percent of a mark or 10% is a grade. It makes a difference between an A and a B, or a B and a C, or a 8 and a 9 if it says stay 9. So these are a couple things I do to increase participation. So in each session, so for example, if you go to module 2, again, you have the learning outcomes, you have read it, apply it, discuss it. So in here, checklist for writing outcomes. So anything they click on, there are useful resources that they can click on and read and use. So there's all kinds. That's another thing that Sonia mentioned, have useful resources. This is full, 20 years full of resources that I've created, or my grad students that were teaching assistants created for me. And that I can't get out of here, sorry. That we use to get, so they to help them learn to teach online. So when they go to the discussion forum, they can here's a tip thing. So here, the big picture, tips for this week's task. So here I give them exact examples of what they need to do based on what learners have done in the past. Learn with and from others, sharing knowledge. So little tips and things for them to learn from each other. So everything is at their fingertips. Everything is well written. Everything is well planned. So it's very easy and convenient. So this roadmap is one of the things that my teachers find most helpful. The learners know everything that they're expected to do in every module at their fingertips. They have everything they need to read, they have and discuss and post. So here's one for guidelines with voiceover. So there's a lot of different resources here, examples of how to do it step by step. So there are very few questions. Sometimes we will offer them a face-to-face session or online. So tonight or Wednesday night at 8 p.m., there's going to be a voluntary session. And what I find is very few show up, or they'll come in the last one question. Because of the question and answer, they can ask their questions so quickly and get their answers so quickly. If I offer a face-to-face, if it's face-to-face, usually no one shows up. They think they miss face-to-face learning, but they don't miss it enough to get in their car, drive to campus, get a babysitter, get parking. So when you offer it, they don't miss it that much. Even if it's online and convenient, very few show up. It's usually me just sitting there for an hour, you know, waiting for people and that don't show up. So I get no emails, almost no emails. And if I offer face-to-face, they basically don't need it or want it. So this roadmap is one of the best tips I can give you. It just, learners love it. There's no confusion. And one of the biggest problems with e-learning is that people get lost. But with the roadmap, and I also have a syllabus because the university requires it, but it's mainly the roadmap that they use. So, shut that. And moving along. We talked about that. Sometimes we have phone calls if they have technical issues one-on-one. But again, because of all these step-by-step documents that we've created over the years, there's very few. We evaluate each course with a temperature check and 3 or 4 modules in and a final summative evaluation. The summative evaluation doesn't help with the course you're teaching, but it'll give you information on how to improve the next iteration. These are some of the comments we got from the course that I pulled out. Just to read a couple, especially the roadmap is something I will use in my future teaching and learning with students. An e-sample very quickly gives you an objective of where you want to arrive and is very effective. That was super helpful. I definitely took a lot of useful tips from this course. I saw a lot of things I could improve in my own courses, nice touches, like how to get participants more involved, how to support them, and tips in keeping them motivated. The learning objectives were spot on. The course was very well structured and the content was based on an applicable knowledge, etc. So you can read through those on your own. This course was accredited at the University of Malta by the Program Validation Committee in 2019 with 2 ECTS. The course was evaluated and the findings published in a referee journal. It's been taught in 5 different countries and it won an honorable mention in an international e-learning academic awards program in 2020. So just a couple of things to remember. A climate of respect is really important, so learners learn with, from, and about each other. Having a learning community is important, so we always have them develop a learner profile where they put a picture of themselves, where they put things, you know, with their faculty, their research interests, something personal about themselves, if they have children or a dog or like to cook or like to hike. So we give them some guidelines. So everybody has a learner profile. The first week we have them read the profiles and respond to one another just to develop a learning community, which is really a prerequisite to effective e-learning. We have different tips to get them to active participate. We get them to share their pros and cons of learning experiences. We make them assignments practical and useful. the course is so practical and needed. And of course, the pandemic helped me with this. It's usually oversubscribed. And in conclusion, some of the tips are, if you can do a needs analysis, use the framework as a quality standard, at least read through it and understand what's important to design effective e-learning. Evaluate your course. If you can, use the temperature check, borrow hours, adapt it, use a roadmap, have resources, have e-samples. You may not be able to have e-samples till you've taught the course once. Ask your students. They've never said no to me. They're very flattered when I ask to use their assignments. I also put their name on it, so it's sort of a publication for them. Divide your discussion groups in groups so they're smaller and save learners time. Don't allow them to email you unless it's personal. Track your learners and email them if they're not participating. Have a pub. The thing in discussion groups that I found is learners started to post things that weren't useful. Like sometimes they'll just say, I agree, or good point. I explained to them not to do that. That's not helpful. You know, unless it's something that adds value to the conversation, don't post. And also don't post and if it's something you know a lot about, 1 week you might want to post a lot, like 2 or 3 times, but don't post after every comment. It's like someone being in the face-to-face class and talking too much. It can be annoying. If it's not adding value, don't post. You should be able to post once every week, give them some standards and expectations. But there may be a week you have nothing to say. So, you know, it's not really helpful to try to post something just to impress us, but there shouldn't be too many weeks you have nothing to say. So 1 week, maybe 2, but you should post once every week. It should be a substantial post that adds value. If not, don't post, I agree. Don't post yes or good point. It has to be something that extends the conversation. And so give them a template of what you expect. And if they're not posting, you would have to follow up. Always ask the 2 questions. What's working? You don't need to say what's not working, because if you do, you need to say, how can it be improved? Which will give you the same answer. I used to have both, but what's not working and how can it be improved were redundant. I'm trying to think of other things. I think I'm almost finished. Are there any questions? I always, like Sonia, I have office hours, but no one ever shows up because I'll have them once a week, but I don't need them because it's organized. The question and answer, usually answer the questions. Once in a while, someone will have a technical issue where they need some help, but basically the question and answer replaces office hours. So I am done. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Colla. There was some very interesting and many tips shared there by you through all your experience. So as Colla has mentioned, or are there any questions from the audience before I have a couple of comments and questions myself? So the floor is open. We have about another 5 to 10 minutes. Let me go ahead. Having done this course of yours, Colla, which was very helpful for me as an academic, with the e-samples, I agree very much with some of the testimonials there, that they were very helpful and give you a great example of what you're requesting from, and then it's easy to draw from one's experience and adapt your answer to your assignment and so forth. But my question is more about, through all those years of experience, you have seen it all, you've been through the different stages of e-learning, and you've created all those units, the 9 modules, let's say, which cover the most important topics that we as instructors or academics should know about teaching online and evaluating our teaching and designing our content. How often do you have those new modules been added? I mean, are we at a point where you think soon there will be new models as e-learning is changing? How often do you add a new module to that? And do you see any new modules very soon coming up into this course of yours?
Yeah, that's a great question. We did add a new module about 3 years ago, or no, yeah, I guess we developed it, and we did add a new module on based on our review of literature for this grant, and it was the one on community. So answer your question, yes, we do. Do I think we need more new modules? Yes, I do. And they would be based on the writing the proposal and doing the research that we just did with you. I think we need one on inclusion, diversion. What was the other thing we talked about? I can't remember. I'm blank. But based on how e-learning is changing and what grants are calling for, I think we need module on diversion and inclusion. And there's something else too, but I can't remember what I'm thinking.
Equity, I think.
And in our extended course, the Train the Trainer, we had one on technology, and we have one on pedagogical theory, and gosh, I can't remember the third module. So yeah, you can't put everything about e-learning in one course probably, but if we extend this to a course for undergrad or accredited course in university, I think we will add, I think most university courses are 13 modules, not 9. So I think we can add modules on inclusion, diversion, pedagogical theory, etc. Absolutely, I think we need to continually improve.
Okay, thank you. I have another one more question, and obviously you've seen it all since the beginning, and especially in academia, when you came across professors that were not open to this change and were being forced to learn about it, to transfer their lectures in online environments. How did you deal with them? How do you deal with people that are not open to this change and are being forced to do it and being professors and all?
That's a great question. I was invited to I went to Malta on my sabbatical in 2016 as a volunteer. And that was the year I did a needs analysis to find out what they wanted and needed, because they were way behind in e-learning. And when I talked to professors, there was anger in the room. Now, there's been a huge change since I've been there. I don't feel that anymore, especially after the pandemic, when they didn't have any choice. You either teach online or you don't teach, and the university will shut down. How did I deal with it? You have to be careful. When people say, some of the arguments were, well, our face-to-face learning is so good, and online learning is not as good, and the learners will cheat. These were some of the comments I heard in 2016. And so I had to just sort of listen and sort of say, and even the rector, when I went, sort of had his arms crossed. He thought I was going to tell them that everything should be e-learning. I don't think everything should be e-learning. I don't think e-learning is a panacea. I think there's a need for e-learning for a certain segment of the population. I think, for example, graduate students where they work all day and they want to do it at night, or they don't want to get a babysitter or drive or park. I think for undergrad learners to take one course, maybe a semester, or one course a year is a good idea, so they're familiar with technology when they graduate and teach in schools or work so they have experience. But I think the social of face-to-face in undergrad is really important. I don't think now, and then if there's a pandemic, then of course you need it. So there is a time and a place for e-learning. I don't think it's a panacea, and this is what I communicate. I'm not saying that e-learning is the best thing for every situation, and with some skills for, operating skills, etc., it's better face-to-face. Although we've done it online. So I empathize with them, first of all, and I do talk about the stages of transition. You know, I often use death and dying, the stages of death and dying. First, there's denial, and then there's bargaining, you know, and the pros and cons of e-learning. But the thing I have to point out to them is our face-to-face learning is not as good as we like to think. If you go to learners and into their classroom, and universities always talk about being innovative and cutting edge, and you go into the classroom, often you'll see a professor at the front of the room and learners in rows, you know, and the professor's using cutting edge 1980 technology, PowerPoint slides, and it's not cutting edge. And often they're being given information like history, which the learner can Google and find out more efficiently and faster the answer to. Why does a learner need to drive to campus to have that kind of information? So now we're using the flipped classroom where the learners can read first and come to the classroom and do hands-on activities, and which is much better. But often learners are bored to death. And when I started teaching 30 years ago, I could stand in front of the room and give them experiences and give them practical ideas and make them tell them stories and make them laugh and use humor and use practical ideas. It changed over my 20 years of teaching, so that they all had a phone in their hand and or a computer. They all have this shield. I like to think they're typing what I'm saying, but probably they're shopping, or they're probably texting each other or working on their assignment for the next class or whatever. So the assumption that face-to-face is better because it's face-to-face is, I think, outdated and wrong. I think learners are often very bored with face-to-face learning, the way we teach it. So I have to point out some of these things to sort of get them to realize. And also the fact that, you know, finally, what really changed e-learning was when the administration realized they were losing market share. Learners were taking, if there was no graduate course in Malta, they were taking their grad course online at another university. Or so they were losing market share to those that were teaching online. And learners weren't coming to them from other countries because they didn't have programs. So once administration comes on board and offers courses and support and incentives, professors slowly became more open to it. And there's just peer pressure. Like, learners want more flexibility. Learners want more convenience, especially a grad course. But I think even when I taught undergrad, the first time I taught it was a curriculum course, and we offered it. There were like 9 different modules of the course. Only one was offered online, mine. This is a long time ago. And learners that took the online course, remember, they're face-to-face and all their other courses are face-to-face. They were so glad to have one course online. So one morning a week they could stay home, or one morning a week, you know, they didn't have to come to campus or whatever. So now they all volunteered to take it. So that makes a difference. And eventually now all of those courses are online. So learners do get one of their courses online in their undergrad program. So those are a few of the things we've done. Offering support is one way, offering continuing education courses and giving them incentives. We're trying to get incentives so that they can, it's considered in promotion, but that's a tough one. We never were able to do that at the University of Ottawa, but we're trying to do that at the University of Malta, where professors that do take risks and do teach online are given some time, maybe a course reduction, or the term they design the course, they might be given one less course to teach. The other thing is too, when I talk about time, it does take a heck of a lot of time to design an effective course. There's lots of tricks to that. You don't need to design everything on your own. There are a lot of free resources online. The first time you teach it, it takes forever to design it. There's no getting around that. But after the first time you teach it, I would argue it takes no more time, and maybe less, to edit it and revise it the second and third and fourth time you teach it. No more time than a face-to-face course. So Those are some of the things I did. You can't jam it down their throat and you can't make them do it. But the other thing is to convince them of the benefits. They don't need to drive to campus. You can be in your pajamas and teach. You can have a glass of wine or a coffee while you're teaching. You don't need to get parking. You can be at a conference in another country. You can be on holidays and teach. So once you go through the blood, sweat, and tears of designing your course, it has been very helpful to professors, gives you much more flexibility and convenience for yourself. Plus you look more innovative and creative. Yeah, convincing them that there are benefits for them as well is another way.
Great, thank you. We have a question here from Lizo. I'll just read it out. Thank you for the presentation, Professor. Can you, one second, just see it. Can you share your lowest and highest class total you have had to teach to date?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm lucky. Don't think I've ever taught one of those big classes or I think maybe 40 might be the most. The other thing is too, I give a lot of feedback and I give it fast. Students are often surprised at how much feedback I give them and how fast. So that's another quality standard that I do. Yeah, 40 or 42 would be the largest class I've taught online.
Thank you. And if there's any more questions, either for Sonia or Colla, we can take one more question. If there is, otherwise, I think we are done for today. Okay, I'll just take one last look here if there's any questions. Okay, with that, then I want to thank Professor MacDonald and Dr. Sonia Andreu for those 2 great talks. We are lucky to have you here today, taking your time out and discussing what you've discussed. I want to thank the participants for joining us today. And with that, I will end the session. I can give a last word for you, for each of the speakers, if they want to say something.
Well, thank you, Alex, very much for inviting us, for having us here with you. And like I said before, I think that the biggest challenge is to sort of attempt to dissolve the screen in a sense, but on the other hand, keeping all the benefits and the positives that this screen provides our students with. So that's a tricky line we walk. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Professor Colla, anything else, or can I close?
Nice to meet you, Sonia. Nice to meet you, everyone. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.